It was an ordinary Sunday morning when Sarah Johnson decided to take a walk in the local park. The sky was clear blue, and the autumn leaves crunched under her feet as she walked along the quiet path. Sarah was a simple girl with a kind heart. At just 19 years old, she worked part-time at the local library while attending community college. As she walked deeper into the park, away from the playground where families gathered, Sarah heard a strange sound. It was faint at first, a small whimper that could have been the wind. But when she stopped to listen, she heard it again. Something was crying nearby. Sarah followed the sound, stepping carefully off the path and into the trees. The whimpering grew louder. After pushing aside some fallen branches near a small creek, she gasped at what she found. There, shivering in a shallow hole, was a tiny puppy. It was dirty and wet, with patches of fur missing. One of its legs was bent at a strange angle. The puppy's eyes were barely open, but when it saw Sarah, it tried to move away, crying out in pain. "It's okay, little one," Sarah whispered, though her heart was racing. "I won't hurt you." She took off her jacket and gently wrapped it around the trembling animal. The puppy was so small it fit in her hands. It couldn't be more than a few weeks old, and Sarah felt anger burn inside her. Who would throw away a helpless animal like trash? With the puppy safely in her arms, Sarah ran all the way to the nearest animal clinic. Her lungs burned and her legs ached, but she didn't stop. The tiny creature's breathing was getting weaker, and Sarah feared it might not survive. Dr. Martinez was just about to close the clinic when Sarah burst through the door. "Please," she begged, out of breath. "This puppy needs help." The vet took one look at the animal and quickly went into action. "It's not good," he told Sarah as he examined the puppy. "Broken leg, signs of infection, and severe malnutrition. He's been out there for days. Can you save him?" Sarah asked, tears filling her eyes. Dr. Martinez looked at her with serious eyes. "I can try, but the treatment will be expensive, and even then, I can't promise he'll make it." Without hesitation, Sarah pulled out her wallet. Inside was her savings, money she had been putting aside for months to buy a laptop for school. "I'll pay whatever it costs," she said firmly. For the next 3 hours, Sarah waited in the clinic while Dr. Martinez worked to save the puppy's life. She called her roommate to explain why she wouldn't be home for dinner. She canceled her study plans. Nothing mattered except knowing if the little dog would survive. Finally, Dr. Martinez emerged from the back room, looking tired but satisfied. "He's stable for now," he said. "The next 48 hours will be critical." Sarah felt relief wash over her. "Can I see him?" The vet led her to a small cage where the puppy lay sleeping. He looked so fragile, with bandages on his leg and an IV attached to his small body. But his breathing was steady now. "What will happen to him?" Sarah asked softly. "Well, he'll need ongoing care, medication, and eventually a good home," Dr. Martinez replied. Sarah looked at the sleeping puppy, feeling something stir inside her. Without another thought, she said, "I'll take him. I'll learn whatever I need to do to care for him." Dr. Martinez smiled, seeing the determination in her eyes. "I thought you might say that. What will you name him?" Sarah watched as the puppy's chest rose and fell with each breath. Despite everything, he was fighting to live. "Lucky," she said. "His name is Lucky." The first week with Lucky was harder than Sarah expected. She brought him home to her small apartment, where she had set up a cozy box lined with soft blankets next to her bed. The puppy needed medicine every 4 hours, even during the night. His injured leg was in a cast, and he could barely move without crying out in pain. Sarah's roommate, Jessica, wasn't pleased about the new addition. "You can barely pay your rent, and now you've got vet bills," she said, shaking her head. "And what about our no pets rule?" But Sarah was determined. "I'll figure it out," she replied, gently stroking Lucky's head as he slept. "I can't explain it, but I feel like we were meant to find each other." For 2 weeks, Sarah barely slept. She would wake up at all hours to give Lucky his medicine, clean his bandages, and feed him with a special dropper. During the day, she carried him to class in a small basket hidden under her jacket. Her professors noticed her exhaustion but said nothing when they caught glimpses of the puppy sleeping quietly in his basket. Sarah picked up extra shifts at the library and started walking dogs in the neighborhood for extra money. Every dollar went toward Lucky's care. She ate cheap ramen noodles and skipped movie nights with friends. None of that mattered to her. Watching Lucky grow stronger each day was worth every sacrifice. By the end of the first month, Lucky began to change. His patchy fur grew back thick and golden. His sad eyes became bright and curious. The vet removed his cast, and though he still limped badly, he could finally move around on his own. Dr. Martinez was amazed by his recovery. "You've done a wonderful job," he told Sarah during their follow-up visit. "Most people wouldn't have put in this much effort for a stray." "He's not a stray anymore," Sarah said, smiling as Lucky licked her hand. "He's family now." As Lucky grew, so did his personality. He was gentle but playful, always following Sarah around the apartment. He seemed to understand when she was stressed about exams, resting his head on her lap as she studied late into the night. On bad days, when she felt overwhelmed by work and school, Lucky would bring her his favorite toy as if trying to cheer her up. The apartment manager discovered Lucky 3 months after Sarah brought him home. He came to fix a leaky sink and found the puppy sleeping on Sarah's bed. "You know pets aren't allowed," he said sternly. "Rules are rules." Sarah felt panic rise in her chest. She couldn't lose Lucky now. "Please," she begged. "He's quiet and well-behaved. No one even knows he's here." The manager looked at Lucky, who was now sitting perfectly still, as if understanding the seriousness of the moment. Then, surprisingly, the man's face softened. "My daughter has a dog like that," he said quietly. "Saved it from a bad situation, too." He sighed deeply. "I didn't see anything today, but if there are any complaints, we'll have to talk again." Sarah was so relieved she nearly cried. "Thank you," she whispered. "You won't hear a sound from him, I promise." As the months passed, Lucky grew into a beautiful dog. His golden fur shone in the sunlight, and though he still limped when he walked, he could run and play like any other dog. People at the park often stopped to ask about him, amazed by the story of his rescue. Sarah didn't know it yet, but Lucky would change her life in ways she couldn't imagine. The small puppy she had saved from death would soon lead her to an unexpected future, one filled with purpose and surprise. But for now, she was simply happy to have found a friend who loved her unconditionally. Each night before bed, Sarah would look at Lucky and whisper, "You're the best decision I ever made." 2 years flew by, and Lucky grew into a handsome dog with golden fur that gleamed in the sunlight. Though he still walked with a slight limp, it never slowed him down. Sarah had graduated from community college and found a job at the local animal shelter. Her experience with Lucky had shown her what she truly wanted to do with her life: help animals in need. The shelter was understaffed and overcrowded, with more animals coming in each day than were being adopted. Sarah worked long hours cleaning cages, feeding the animals, and trying her best to make them comfortable. The work was hard, but every time she helped an animal find a forever home, she felt the same joy she had experienced when Lucky began to thrive. "You have a special touch with the difficult cases," her boss, Maria, told her one afternoon. They were working with a dog that had been so badly abused it wouldn't let anyone near it. Somehow, Sarah had managed to gain its trust. "I learned from Lucky," Sarah replied, watching as the frightened dog finally took food from her hand. "Sometimes all they need is someone who won't give up on them." Sarah's reputation at the shelter grew. People began to ask for her specifically when they came in looking to adopt. She had a talent for matching the right animal with the right family. Even the local newspaper did a small story about her work, featuring a photo of Sarah and Lucky sitting among the shelter dogs. It was this article that caught the attention of Dr. Rebecca Chen, a veterinarian who specialized in rehabilitation for injured animals. She came to the shelter one day and watched Sarah work. "You didn't go to school for this, did you?" Dr. Chen asked after introducing herself. Sarah shook her head. "I just learned as I went along. Lucky was my first patient," she said with a smile, pointing to her dog who was gently playing with a new shelter puppy. "You have natural talent," Dr. Chen said. "Have you ever thought about becoming a veterinary technician? My clinic is looking for someone to train." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. The position would mean better pay, more training, and the chance to help animals recover from serious injuries, just like she had helped Lucky. "I don't have the money for school," Sarah admitted, her excitement fading. "There are scholarships," Dr. Chen replied. "And you could work part-time at my clinic while you study. Think about it." That night, Sarah sat on her small apartment balcony with Lucky at her feet. She had moved to a pet-friendly building last year, a tiny place but with a patch of grass nearby for Lucky to play, As she looked at the stars, she thought about Dr. Chen's offer. "What do you think, boy?" she asked, scratching behind Lucky's ears. "Should I take a chance?" Lucky looked up at her with his warm brown eyes, as if to say, "You took a chance on me." The next day, Sarah accepted Dr. Chen's offer. For the next 2 years, she worked during the day and took classes at night. The schedule was exhausting, but Lucky was always there, waiting patiently for her return, ready with a wagging tail and unconditional love. By her 23rd birthday, Sarah had earned her certification as a veterinary technician. Dr. Chen's clinic specialized in rehabilitating injured wildlife and abused domestic animals. Sarah learned how to create treatment plans, assist in surgeries, and provide physical therapy to animals recovering from trauma. "You've come so far," Dr. Chen told her at her graduation celebration, "and it all started because you stopped to help one puppy." Sarah looked at Lucky, now a dignified 4-year-old dog who still accompanied her to work every day, where he helped calm nervous animals with his gentle presence. "He saved me as much as I saved him," Sarah replied softly. What Sarah didn't know was that her journey with Lucky was about to take another unexpected turn, one that would connect to the past in ways she never imagined. Sarah's work at Dr. Chen's Rehabilitation Center quickly became known throughout the region. Her special way with injured animals caught the attention of local pet owners and wildlife officials alike. What started as a job soon became a calling, and Sarah found herself handling more complex cases as her skills grew. One rainy Tuesday, a park ranger brought in a fox with a severely damaged paw. Most of the staff were hesitant to handle the wild animal, but Sarah stepped forward without fear. "Let me try," she said, her voice calm and steady. Dr. Chen watched as Sarah approached the frightened fox. Lucky sat nearby, his presence somehow reassuring to the wild creature. With gentle movements and soft words, Sarah managed to examine the fox without causing it additional stress. "How did you do that?" the ranger asked, amazed at how the fox had allowed Sarah to touch its injured paw. Sarah smiled. "They can sense when you truly want to help them," she explained, preparing a treatment plan. "Fear and pain make them defensive, but patience breaks through those barriers." Word of Sarah's talents spread. Soon, people were driving from neighboring towns to bring their injured pets to the clinic. A local wildlife photographer came to document her work with rehabilitated animals returning to the wild. The story appeared in regional magazines, complete with beautiful photos of Sarah releasing a healed hawk back to the sky. As her reputation grew, so did the donations to the clinic. Dr. Chen was able to expand their facilities and purchase new equipment. Sarah was promoted to head rehabilitation specialist, with her own team of assistants. "You've changed this place," Dr. Chen told her during their morning coffee break. "When you started, we could barely keep the lights on. Now look at us." Sarah blushed at the praise. "I'm just doing what I love." "That's exactly why you're successful," Dr. Chen replied. "The animals respond to your genuine care." Lucky, now 5 years old, had become the unofficial mascot of the clinic. With his gentle nature and understanding eyes, he helped calm new arrivals and seemed to know exactly which patients needed extra attention. Children who brought in injured pets always left feeling better after spending time with Lucky. "That dog of yours should be on the payroll," joked Mark, the clinic receptionist, as Lucky guided a limping puppy back to its kennel after treatment. Despite her growing success, Sarah lived simply. She still rented the same small apartment, though she had saved enough to buy a used car for her commute to work. Every extra dollar went into a fund she had started to help low-income families with emergency vet bills. "You could move to a bigger place," her friend Jessica suggested during a rare night out. "You're doing well now." Sarah shook her head. "Lucky and I don't need much space. I'd rather use the money to help more animals." On the 5th anniversary of finding Lucky, Sarah organized a special event at the clinic. They offered free checkups for rescued animals and matching services for people looking to adopt. The local news station sent a reporter to cover the story. "What made you decide to dedicate your life to animal rehabilitation?" the reporter asked, microphone in hand. Sarah knelt beside Lucky, her hand resting on his golden fur. "When I found Lucky, he was barely alive. Everyone said he probably wouldn't make it, but I couldn't give up on him. Watching him heal showed me that with enough love and care, amazing recoveries are possible." The camera zoomed in on Lucky, who seemed to smile at the attention. His story, From abandoned puppy to beloved therapy dog, touched viewers across the state. That evening, after the event, Sarah received an email from someone claiming to be from a national animal welfare organization. The message was brief but intriguing. Your work has not gone unnoticed. We would like to discuss an opportunity that could help you reach even more animals in need. Sarah read the email twice, wondering what it could mean. Little did she know that this message was connected to someone from her past, someone who had been watching her journey all along. The email from the Animal Welfare Organization led to a phone call with a woman named Eleanor Winters. She spoke in a polished, professional voice that made Sarah slightly nervous. "We've been following your work for some time," Eleanor explained. "Your rehabilitation techniques are impressive, especially considering your limited resources." Sarah thanked her, still unsure what this was all about. "I just do the best I can for each animal." "That's exactly why we're interested in you," Eleanor continued. "We're planning to feature outstanding animal rescue workers in our next national campaign. Would you be willing to share Lucky's story?" After discussing the details, Sarah agreed. 2 weeks later, a professional photographer came to the clinic to take pictures of Sarah and Lucky working with the animals. The photographer seemed especially interested in capturing Lucky interacting with the other patients. "He's a natural," the photographer said, watching Lucky gently nudge a frightened rabbit back into its enclosure. "You can see the connection he has with them." The photos were beautiful. Sarah helping a young deer stand on injured legs, Lucky sitting patiently beside a nervous cat, the two of them together in the evening light outside the clinic. Sarah was proud, but also a little embarrassed by all the attention. A month after the photo shoot, a large envelope arrived at Sarah's apartment. Inside was a glossy magazine featuring her story. "The Rescue Worker. How One Woman and Her Rescued Dog Are Changing Lives," read the headline. The article described how Sarah had found Lucky, nursed him back to health, and how that experience had led her to her career helping injured animals. Sarah was reading the article for the second time when she noticed something strange. There was a quote from someone who claimed to have witnessed her rescuing Lucky that day in the park. "I saw her carry that dying puppy for nearly a mile, wrapped in her own jacket, even though it was cold. I knew then that this young woman was special." Sarah frowned. She didn't remember seeing anyone else in that part of the park. Who could have been watching her? The next day, a plain white envelope arrived in her mailbox with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter on simple paper. Asterisk, "Dear Sarah, asterisk. Asterisk, you won't remember me, but I remember you. 6 years ago, I watched you rescue a small golden puppy from the creek area in Wilson Park. I was there that day for reasons I'm not proud of. I had actually abandoned that puppy there myself, asterisk. Asterisk, my life was in a terrible place then. I had lost my job, my home, and couldn't care for the puppies my dog had given birth to. Instead of taking them to a shelter, I did something unforgivable. I left them in different locations, hoping someone would find them, asterisk. Asterisk, when I saw how carefully you wrapped that puppy in your jacket, how you ran to get help despite the cold rain, something broke inside me. I followed you to the vet clinic and watched through the window as you gave the doctor every dollar you had to save that dog's life, asterisk. Asterisk, that day changed me. I got help for my problems. I found work and a stable home. For years, I've followed your story from a distance, watching how you turned one act of kindness into a lifetime of helping animals, asterisk. Asterisk. The other puppies were also found and rescued. I made sure of it. But seeing what became of the puppy you named Lucky has been my greatest comfort, asterisk. Asterisk, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that you saved more than one life that day. You saved mine too, asterisk. Asterisk, I've recently come into some money and want to make amends. Someone will be contacting you soon. Please hear them out, asterisk. Asterisk, a life changed by your kindness, asterisk." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the letter again. The abandoned puppy, the person watching from a distance. It all made sense now. But what did the writer mean about someone contacting her? And who exactly was this mysterious person? She sat on her small balcony with Lucky beside her, the letter still in her hand, wondering what would happen next. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious letter. For a week, she found herself looking over her shoulder, wondering if someone was watching her. She considered showing the letter to Dr. Chen but decided against it. What if it was just a prank? On a crisp Saturday morning, Sarah was in her kitchen making coffee. Lucky lay on his favorite spot near the window, basking in the sunlight. His ears suddenly perked up, and he raised his head, alert. "What is it, boy?" Sarah asked, peering through the blinds. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows had pulled up in front of her apartment building. It stood out in the modest neighborhood where most people drove older, practical cars. Sarah watched as the vehicle sat there, engine running. Lucky got to his feet, his tail wagging slowly. He didn't seem alarmed, just curious. "Probably someone visiting the neighbors," Sarah muttered, though her heart beat faster. 3 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. Sarah froze, coffee mug in hand. Lucky trotted to the door, not barking as he usually did with strangers. Taking a deep breath, Sarah opened the door. A tall woman in a gray business suit stood there. She had silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and carried a leather portfolio. Behind her, the black SUV waited at the curb, its driver barely visible through the tinted windows. "Sarah Johnson?" the woman asked, her voice surprisingly warm. "Yes, that's me," Sarah replied cautiously. "My name is Victoria Reed. I represent the Winters Foundation for Animal Welfare." She held out a business card with an embossed silver logo. "May I come in? I have something important to discuss with you." Sarah hesitated, but Lucky had already moved closer to the visitor, his tail now wagging with enthusiasm. If Lucky trusted her, Sarah thought, perhaps she was safe. "Please, come in," Sarah said, stepping aside. "Sorry about the small space." Victoria entered and took a seat on Sarah's worn sofa. Lucky immediately sat beside her, resting his head on her knee as if they were old friends. "He seems to know you," Sarah remarked, still standing. Victoria smiled, gently stroking Lucky's head. "I've been looking forward to meeting him in person for a long time." "In person?" Sarah asked, confused. "Perhaps I should explain." Victoria opened her portfolio and removed a folder. The Winters Foundation was established 3 years ago by someone who wishes to remain anonymous. Our mission is to support innovative animal rehabilitation programs across the country. She handed Sarah a glossy brochure showing state-of-the-art animal rehabilitation centers and wildlife rescue operations. "Our founder has been following your work with great interest," Victoria continued, "particularly your methods of using therapy animals like Lucky to help in the recovery process." Sarah sat down across from Victoria, surprised. "I didn't realize anyone was paying attention to that. It's just something Lucky and I figured out together." "That's exactly what makes it special," Victoria replied. "Your approach is intuitive, not learned from textbooks." Victoria pulled out more papers from her folder. "The foundation would like to offer you a grant of $250,000 to develop your rehabilitation methods further." Sarah gasped. That's impossible. There must be a mistake." "No mistake," Victoria assured her. "Our founder is very specific about wanting to support your work." Lucky nudged Victoria's hand, and she smiled down at him. He seems to approve of the idea. "Who is this founder?" "Why me?" Sarah asked, still shocked by the amount. Victoria's expression became more serious. "I'm not at liberty to reveal their identity. All I can say is that they believe they owe you a great debt." The letter flashed in Sarah's mind. Could this be connected? "There's more," Victoria continued. "The foundation has purchased land outside of town. We'd like to build a specialized animal rehabilitation center there, with you as the director." Sarah's hands began to tremble. "This is too much. I don't have the qualifications to run a center." "Our founder believes otherwise," Victoria said firmly. "They've watched how you transformed Dr. Chen's small clinic. They believe you have a gift that can't be taught in any university." As Victoria spoke, Lucky moved back to Sarah's side, pressing against her leg as if giving her support. "You don't have to decide today," Victoria said, placing a card on the coffee table. "Think about it. Visit the property. Imagine what you could do with the right resources." As Victoria stood to leave, she looked down at Lucky with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. Something like longing mixed with gratitude. "He's even more beautiful in person," Victoria whispered before heading to the door. For 3 days after Victoria's visit, Sarah walked around in a daze. The offer from the Winters Foundation seemed too good to be true. $250,000 in her own rehabilitation center. Who would give such an opportunity to someone like her? You should at least look at the property, Dr. Chen advised when Sarah confided in her. What do you have to lose? Finally, Sarah called the number on Victoria's card. They arranged to meet the following Saturday to visit the land. When the date arrived, the same black SUV pulled up outside Sarah's apartment. This time, Victoria was in the back seat and motioned for Sarah to join her. Lucky jumped in eagerly, as if he knew exactly where they were going. They drove for 30 minutes, leaving the city behind. The SUV turned onto a country road and then through large wooden gates with a simple sign, "Future Home of New Beginnings Animal Rehabilitation Center." New beginnings? Sarah asked, looking at Victoria. Our founder thought it was fitting, Victoria replied with a small smile. The property was beautiful, 20 acres of rolling land with a stream running through it, wooded areas for shade, and open fields where animals could exercise during recovery. A small house stood near the entrance. That would be your living quarters, if you accept, Victoria explained. The rehabilitation facilities would be built according to your specifications. As they walked the property, Lucky ran ahead, exploring every corner with excitement. He seemed completely at home. I still don't understand, Sarah said, watching Lucky splash in the shallow stream. Why me? Why all this? Victoria checked her watch. I think it's time you met our founder. They should be arriving shortly. Sarah's heart began to race. Was she finally going to learn who was behind all this? They walked back toward the entrance, where a second vehicle had parked next to the SUV. It was a modest blue pickup truck, nothing like what Sarah had expected. A man stepped out, tall with graying hair and weathered features. He wore simple jeans and a flannel shirt. When he saw the group approaching, he stood very still, his eyes fixed on Lucky. Lucky stopped in his tracks, his ears perked up and his head tilted to one side. Then, without warning, he bolted toward the stranger, running faster than Sarah had seen him move in years, his limp barely noticeable. Lucky, wait. Sarah called, worried about how the man would react to a large dog running at him. But to her surprise, the man knelt down and opened his arms. Lucky reached him and began licking his face, whining with what sounded like joy, his whole body wiggling with excitement. He remembers, the man said, his voice thick with emotion. After all these years, he actually remembers. Sarah approached slowly, confused. I don't understand. How does Lucky know you? The man stood up, keeping one hand on Lucky's head. Because I'm the one who abandoned him and his siblings 6 years ago, he said, his eyes filling with tears. I'm the one who wrote you that letter. Sarah felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. You're the founder of the Winters Foundation. The man nodded. My name is Robert Winters. I was at my lowest point when I abandoned those puppies. I had lost everything, my job, my wife, my home. I was drinking too much and not thinking clearly. Victoria stepped forward. Robert is my brother. After seeing what you did for Lucky, he got help for his addiction. He worked hard to rebuild his life. 3 years ago, I created an app that became very successful, Robert explained. I sold it to a tech company for millions. But money meant nothing unless I could make amends for what I'd done. He looked at Lucky, who hadn't left his side. I traced all the puppies. Most found good homes, but none thrived like Lucky did with you. Watching from a distance as you built your career helping animals, all because of one puppy you found. I knew what I needed to do with my money. Sarah was speechless, trying to process everything. I don't expect forgiveness, Robert said quietly, but I hope you'll accept this center. Not for me, but for all the animals who need someone like you. Lucky looked up at Sarah, then back at Robert, as if trying to connect the two most important people in his life. Sarah stood between Robert and Lucky, feeling as though the world had suddenly shifted into a different reality. The man who had abandoned Lucky was now offering her the chance of a lifetime. Part of her wanted to be angry, to reject his offer and walk away. But when she looked at Lucky, sitting calmly beside Robert as if he had forgiven him long ago, Sarah knew she needed to listen to her heart rather than her pride. I need some time to think, she finally said, her voice quiet but steady. Robert nodded respectfully. Of course. This is a lot to take in. The offer stands no matter what. The funds are already in a trust for the rehabilitation center, whether you choose to run it or not. They drove back to the city in silence. Lucky resting his head on Sarah's lap, as if trying to comfort her. Victoria gave Sarah all the legal documents for the proposed center before dropping her off at her apartment. "Take as much time as you need," Victoria said kindly. "Robert waited 6 years to make this right. He can wait a little longer." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She spread the papers across her small kitchen table and read every detail of Robert's proposal. The center would be state-of-the-art, with facilities for domestic animals, wildlife, and even farm animals. There would be living quarters for staff, a veterinary clinic, and educational spaces for community outreach. It was everything Sarah had ever dreamed of and more. As dawn broke, Sarah made her decision. She picked up her phone and called Victoria. "I'd like to meet with Robert again," she said. "At the property, if possible." Later that day, the black SUV returned. This time, Sarah noticed Lucky's excitement as they approached the gates of what could become their new home. Robert was already there, sitting on the porch of the small house, looking nervous. Sarah walked up to him, Lucky at her side. "I thought about your offer," she said. Robert stood, his expression anxious but hopeful. "I'm not going to pretend what you did wasn't wrong," Sarah continued. "Abandoning those puppies was cruel." Robert nodded, his eyes downcast. "I know, there's no excuse." "But," Sarah said, taking a deep breath, "I believe in second chances. Lucky is living proof of that. And what you're trying to do now, making amends in such a meaningful way, that shows real change." She held out her hand. "I accept your offer, with one condition." "Anything," Robert replied, shaking her hand. "I want you involved in the center too, not just as a donor, but as part of our team. You understand the importance of rehabilitation, and fresh starts better than most." Robert looked stunned. "You want me to work with you? After what I did?" Sarah nodded. "The past is the past. What matters is what we do now, and I think Lucky would like having both of us around." As if understanding their conversation, Lucky gave a happy bark and ran a circle around them both. 1 year later, the New Beginnings Animal Rehabilitation Center opened its doors. What started as Sarah's small dream had become a reality beyond anything she could have imagined. The center quickly gained national attention for its innovative approaches to animal rehabilitation, combining traditional veterinary medicine with therapy animals and natural healing environments. On opening day, as reporters gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Sarah stood with Lucky on one side and Robert on the other. Dr. Chen and her staff had joined them, along with Victoria and many supporters from the community. 6 years ago, I found an injured puppy that everyone thought would die, Sarah told the crowd. Today, that same puppy, now a handsome dog named Lucky, has helped create a place where thousands of animals will get their second chance. She looked down at Lucky, his golden fur shining in the sunlight, his limp barely noticeable after years of care and love. "Life works in strange circles," she continued. "The person who once abandoned Lucky became the one who made this center possible. The puppy that was thrown away became our greatest teacher about healing and forgiveness." As Lucky pressed against her leg, Sarah felt a sense of completeness. Her journey had come full circle. From a lonely girl who found a dying puppy to the director of a rehabilitation center that would change countless lives, animal and human alike. "Every life deserves a second chance," Sarah said, cutting the ribbon. "And sometimes, saving one life can lead to saving many more." Behind her, the center's sign gleamed in the sunlight. "New Beginnings, where healing starts with hope." And beneath it, a smaller plaque showed the silhouette of a limping puppy becoming a strong, healthy dog, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could change the world.